Hi everyone, my name is Melanie Marks, and today I will be sharing with you my final research presentation for English. Enjoy! So you may be wondering, what does this presentation have to offer? Well, I'm glad you asked. We will be comparing life in the United States, the United Kingdom, and in Brazil. The areas we will be discussing are tipping, like in restaurants or at bars, the food and drink etiquettes, and bicycle usage. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. First, let's discuss tipping. Tipping is a gesture that many people do, whether it's leaving change or leaving a couple of dollars. People usually do this to thank their server for their time and their effort into making their experience excellent. In the United States, if you don't tip your server, they will feel upset and think they did a poor job with serving you as a customer. In the article A Very Rough Guide to America from an Englishman in New York by Paul Owen, paragraph 3 states if you don't tip in a restaurant, the waiter or waitress will make a smart remark and your evening will be ruined. If the customer does not tip, they may have a feeling of guilt which could potentially ruin their evening, as Owen states. So what's it like in the UK? Well, in the United Kingdom, there are actually service charges on the bills at restaurants and bars. 12 to 15% is actually the normal amount of service charge that can be added onto your bill. An article by Ferne Arfin on tipping in the United Kingdom states that if you see the service charge on your bill, there is no need to tip. Now, let's talk about what the standard tipping is like without a service charge in the United Kingdom. In the same article, it says if there's no service charge, tipping at 10% is the standard. Arfin also provides information about another way to tip in a restaurant or pub when not dining in. You might see a tip jar on the counter when getting takeaway. There's no pressure to top it up, but people often leave the small change after they've paid. Now, leaving tip isn't required in the UK, but people still do it. So, it all depends on really who it is and just if you want to tip or not. In Brazil, tipping is slightly different than in the UK and the US. In a CNN article titled Traveler's Tipping Guide, What to Tip, How Much, Where by Jane Luong, paragraph 17 states that Brazilians have a friendly reputation, but tipping is not a part of the culture. However, they are often direct and clear on money they want or do not expect. CNN also states that in restaurants, there is a 10% service charge, that is added to the bill, and that while there is no legal obligation to pay it, it's customary to do so. To sum this all up, in Brazil, people aren't expected to tip their waiters and waitresses. It's not a law to do so, but it is normal for the public to tip those that took care of them for their meal. Now that we've discussed what tipping is like, let's move on to food and drinks. Let's be honest, we all have a favorite beverage that we love to order whenever we go to a restaurant, or just a favorite beverage in general. Mine, personally, is milk. But in the United States, it's known that many people have pop or soda as a beverage with their meal. It is the most common drink to have, aside from water. According to A Very Rough Guide to America from an Englishman in New York, Paul Owen states that it's perfectly respectable to drink Coca-Cola or other similar drinks with a meal. However, he does make a good point when he brings up having a cup of tea. As he says, order a cup of tea in a cafe or a restaurant, and you will be confronted with a glass or mug of lukewarm water with a tea bag of some alarming flavor like pomegranate or boysenberry. Although I am not a tea drinker, I have definitely heard from my family members about talking about how restaurants just don't serve cups of tea correctly and that they don't really seem to know what they're doing. On that note, when serving tea, the ingredients aren't even correct some of the time. As it states, and some milk that is probably 50% cream delivered on request, the water needs to be at boiling point for the tea to infuse. So restaurant chains don't know how to serve the correct temperature of water when a customer orders a tea bag, but making a cup of coffee is a given because at least in paragraph 40, They know what they are doing with the coffee. Let's be honest. There are certain foods that we as Americans don't eat with utensils. For instance, pizza. In the US, people rarely eat pizza with utensils, or really any foods around that category. So it does make sense when you eat a slice of pizza with a fork and a knife that someone will give you a strange look. As Owen states, if you eat pizza with a knife and a fork, they look at you like you just ate a sandwich with a spoon. It really does show how the US population is like when it comes to meals. There are so many similarities between the UK and the United States, but food etiquette is one where they differentiate. The article Formal Eating Manners and Etiquette, British Culture, British Customs, and British Traditions on the LEO Network website, there is a list of basic manners when dining in that are expected and a list of what not to do. In paragraph 3, you may use a piece of bread on a fork to soak up sauce or gravy. Never hold the bread in your fingers to do this. You may eat chicken and pizza with your fingers if you are at a barbecue, finger buffet, or very informal setting. Otherwise, always use the knife and fork. The United Kingdom people use their fingers to eat foods like pizza, but it's very rare when they do so. Whereas in the United States, we don't care where we are, we will eat pizza with our hands, no matter what type of setting it is. Compared to the UK and the US, Brazil has a totally different viewpoint on food etiquette. This is because Brazilians eat almost everything with utensils, even foods like French fries. According to the Brazilian Etiquette Table Manners blog posted by Rachel on March 12, 2009, bullet number 6 states, use your utensils for all types of food, even pizzas, sandwiches, and French fries. Food is very rarely eaten with bare hands since it is considered unhygienic to do so. Table manners are also very different, since in the US most of the country eats pizzas with their hands. But in Brazil, the blog states if you do decide to eat food with your hands, wrap it in a napkin so your fingers aren't touching it. This is pretty interesting on how Brazil's food etiquette is compared to all other countries. Now let's talk about bicycle use. In the US, bicycles are expected to follow the same laws as cars on the road. This isn't true though. As stated in the article by Paul Owen, something as tiny and insignificant as a bicycle could never be considered remotely comparable to a car, and to expect it to abide the same rules of the road is considered utterly absurd by cyclists, pedestrians, and drivers alike. To sum this all together, bicycles and cars are two totally different ways of transportation. So what Owen is saying is that this is unreasonable to have the same laws for cyclists and drivers to follow. Now, I forgot to mention this in my last PowerPoint slide, but in the United States, it is recommended to not ride a bicycle on sidewalks, but it is not a law, whereas in the United Kingdom, you cannot do so. This is because the main purpose for sidewalks is for pedestrians. There is a bike lane on most roadways designed specially for the cyclists. According to the cycling rules for the UK Donkey Republic, Every Ride Counts, the website states that in the UK, everyone must drive or ride on the left-hand side of the roadway. Never ride your bike against the traffic flow. There are also rules to follow, like in pedestrian areas, only ride your cycle if there aren't too many pedestrians about. Otherwise, dismount and push it. Also, if there is signage specifically prohibiting cycling in such areas, you'd better respect it. Finally, in Brazil, there is information about the Brazilian cycling law, but not much was provided on Google or on the internet for me to include in this PowerPoint, so I wasn't able to really come up with any information for this section. And that's all, folks. The last 3 slides are works cited. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you have a wonderful, safe, and healthy holiday. Thank you.